Mason's lack of response only made her stronger. Rose now felt like she was being forced into a world she couldn't escape from. Every time Rose tried to push him away, Mason smiled a faint, cruel smile. Welcome to our channel. If you love engaging and emotional love stories, then come to our channel. Here we will bring you stories full of surprises, touching and engaging. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any interesting stories. In today's video, we would like to present to you a story called The Fiancé, narrated by Jane. Please watch along. These past few days, Rose has felt a difficult question in her heart. Ever since Nora, the family's longtime maid, asked for permission to return to her hometown to take care of family matters, Rose has seen everything in this house become strange. Mason, her fiancé, has gone from a busy man with work to a thoughtful man. He cooks, cleans the house, and takes care of her son, Kevin. Mason's actions did not surprise Rose, and she was somewhat grateful. Looking at him, she could not deny that Mason was the perfect man that any woman would want to have. That night, when the whole family had fallen asleep, Mason knelt down in front of Rose, sincerely holding her hand. The engagement ring glittered on his hand like a promise for the future they had talked about. Mason looked deep into her eyes, his voice warm and full of sincerity. "Rose, I love you. Love, will you marry me? We will have a perfect family. I will take care of you and baby Kevin for the rest of my life." Rose looked into Mason's sincere eyes, feeling his love. But her heart was torn. Her feelings for Mason weren't really strong, but for the sake of her son, for the stability of her family, she nodded in agreement. "I agree." Her voice was gentle, but deep in her heart was an inexplicable sadness. As soon as Mason placed the ring on Rose's finger, she felt his satisfied smile. He pulled her close, hugged her tightly, promising a beautiful future that they would build together. That night, after tucking Kevin into bed, Rose went to her room to get some sleep. But as she got down, the door opened and Mason walked in. She sensed something different in his eyes. Without saying a word, Mason walked over, picked her up, and carried her out of the room. "Let's have fun," he said softly but meaningfully, then laid her down on the sofa in the living room. Mason sat down next to him, his face hard and distant. Rose felt a chill run down her spine. She looked at him, her eyes worried, not understanding what was happening. Mason didn't say another word, just bent down and pulled her into his arms. Rose tried to escape, but his strength was too strong. He was no longer the gentle, soft man he always was. His violent actions made Rose feel like she had turned into a tool without any love or emotion. What are you doing?" Rose's voice trembled. Mason didn't answer, which only made her stronger. Rose now felt like she was being forced into a world she couldn't escape from. Every time Rose tried to push him away, Mason smiled a faint, cruel smile. Mason's passionate movements hurt Rose, but Rose didn't protest. Tears rolled down Rose's cheeks, but Mason didn't seem to notice. "Are you hurt?" Mason asked, his voice almost a joke. "Be gentle. It hurts," Rose said weakly, trying to contain her emotions. He leaned down and whispered in Rose's ear. "It hurts but feels good, right? Enjoy it. I love you." Rose was silent, not saying another word. Mason's words were like a knife digging deep into Rose's soul. She couldn't believe that the man she was about to marry had such destructive power. Tears streamed down her cheeks, but Mason didn't care. He continued to force her, making Rose feel like she was being turned into a victim with no way out. For more than 40 minutes, Mason tortured Rose to the core. When he reached his peak, he fell asleep. Rose just lay there, tears streaming down her face, her body and soul melting. She couldn't understand how things had turned out like this. The man she thought was perfect, the man who promised to make her happy, had now turned her into an object of desire. After that terrible night, Rose lived in fear and obsession. She did not face Mason, nor did she know how to escape this situation. Every night she worried, waking up in fear that Mason would continue to act rudely like that night. Things would get worse if Mason continued to act like that. During the day, he was still the perfect man in front of everyone, the one who took care of her son and appeared gentle. But at night, he turned into a different person, without any love or respect. Rose lived in fear for many days, but she did not tell anyone. One day, Rose's father called to check on her. He sensed a change in her tone and the desire to take her and her mother home. Her father was worried when he heard his daughter's uneasy tone, and he kept advising her to leave Mason if she felt anything was wrong. After some thought, Rose decided to take Kevin back to her parents' house, hoping to find some peace in this short period of time. When she asked Mason's opinion, he quickly agreed. This made her even more suspicious of him. "You should go visit your parents. I want you to have some time to rest too." "We'll talk about the wedding later," Mason said, his eyes wide with confusion that Rose couldn't decipher. Returning to her parents' house, Rose felt somewhat relaxed, but still filled with anxiety. Her father was overjoyed to have her and her mother home. Her mother kept talking about Mason, praising him endlessly. She kept saying that Mason was a good man, and Rose should cherish this relationship. "You have to think carefully, Rose. Mason is a good man, loves you sincerely, and takes care of Justin. It's not easy to find someone like him now, so you should consider it," her mother said in a persuasive tone. Rose just kept quiet, not wanting to object. But in her heart, she had already started to doubt Mason's true character. His actions that night made her unable to help but question whether Mason was really a good person or just a perfect person in disguise. One afternoon, while walking around the neighborhood to buy things for Kevin, Rose suddenly remembered Justin, an old friend. Mason had told her before that Justin had left the city after getting married, but something in Mason's words made Rose feel confused. She decided to go to Justin's house to find out what had happened. When Rose arrived at Justin's house, she found the house had completely changed. The main door had been repainted. The garden was no longer the same as before. A strange woman opened the door, holding a child in her arms. Rose asked in confusion, "Sister, are Justin and his family still here?" The woman shook her head in surprise. "Which Justin? I bought this house more than a year ago. The previous owner moved away a long time ago. I heard that their family had many changes. The company went bankrupt. Their son was mentally ill. They had to sell the house and leave." Rose stood frozen in front of the house. The woman's words came as a shock. Justin, the man Rose thought was successful, had fallen into this situation? He had been a good friend with aspirations, and now this. Why had Mason never told her about this? After hearing about Justin, Rose couldn't stop thinking about what she had just learned. She had to figure things out, and figure things out. During her investigation, Rose discovered that Mason was the one behind Justin's family's decline. Mason had used his relationship with her family to take over Justin's company when he was in financial trouble. Not only that, Mason had manipulated everything to put Justin in a deadlock, and then took advantage of his unstable mental state. Everything Mason did was just a strategic plan to achieve his personal ambitions, and his love and care for her were just a cover. She decided to confront Mason and could not continue to lie. Tonight, when Mason just entered the house, Rose was waiting. She looked at him, her eyes full of determination, no longer as confused as before. "Mason, do you have anything to tell me?" Rose asked, her voice calm but full of pressure. Mason was startled for a moment, but then he regained his composure. "What are you talking about? Why are you asking like that? I already know everything about Justin, about what you did to his family. You lied to me, used my family to achieve your goals. Mason stood still, his eyes flashing with confusion. Rose looked deeply at him, waiting for an explanation. The room became stuffy, the air heavy as if foreshadowing an impending storm. Mason sneered, a cold smile Rose had never seen before. He leaned back on the sofa, his eyes soft as if he was assessing her. What if you already knew? Yes, it was all part of my plan. But what do you think you can do? Rose felt her body tense with anger. She couldn't believe Mason would admit everything so casually. She stepped closer to him, her eyes filled with contempt. You took advantage of my family. You brought Justin and his family down. Why? Why did you do that? Her voice was filled with rage. Mason patted Rose's shoulder, his eyes not angry at all. Why? For money, for power, that's the only reason. Justin is too weak, too easily fooled. He created an empire but doesn't know how to keep it. He's too easy and trusts people like you. And you simply seized the opportunity. Rose felt a strong storm in her heart. She couldn't bear it anymore. And you took advantage of me too, right? All you did to me was a lie. Mason sat up, his eyes sharpening. Not exactly. I liked you, Rose. I even thought we could build a good life together. But love is only a small part of a larger plan. You and your family are the bridge to what I want. You may be deeply disappointed, but that's the way the world works. You are an amazing person, Rose said, tears falling from her eyes with bitterness. She couldn't quite place the betrayal, but she felt like she had been part of an ambitious and calculated plan. Mason looked at Rose thoughtfully, his eyes showing no sympathy. Instead, he simply stood up and approached her. You can cry, you can be angry, but in the end, you still can't do anything. Do you think your father will help you? He's been behind me for a long time. Everything I've considered is just part of your and his plan. Rose was speechless, unable to believe her ears. Her father was involved in this too. He was also part of the plot that Mason had set up. She stepped back, feeling everything around her quiet down. My father? He knows about all this too? Rose asked, her voice faltering. Mason nodded without hesitation. Of course. He supported me a lot in my work, took over Justin's company. That was part of his agreement with me. Your family has power, and I have ingenuity. That's why everything went so smoothly. Do you think he loves Justin? No. It's all about power. Mason's words were like a knife stabbing deep into Rose's heart. She felt like she couldn't bear it. The man she was about to marry, the father she had always trusted, both of them had used her to achieve their ambitions. Rose stepped back, her face pale. She felt like the whole world had betrayed her. Mason was still there, calm and cold. He didn't care about her feelings, simply looked at her as if he was evaluating a lost commodity. What now, Rose? What are you going to do? Rose stood up, wiping her tears. She no longer felt weak. The anger and betrayal had made her stronger than ever. I will not let you and my father continue to control my life. You may think you have won, but I will not let this end so easily. Mason smiled faintly, shaking his head. What are you going to do? Report me. Who do you think will believe you? Your father will stand by me, and you will have no evidence against me. What do you think? Rose looked at Mason, her eyes shining with determination. Don't forget that I've lived in this house long enough to know everything. And you also forget that you're the one who automatically revealed all your secrets to me. Mason was pensive for a moment, but he quickly regained his composure. You won't be able to do anything, Rose. You're too weak. You're not strong enough to face this. Don't lie to yourself anymore." Rose didn't answer. She just turned and walked away, leaving Mason standing there with a cold smile on his lips. But this time, Mason knew that he had awakened a strong part of Rose that he hadn't expected before. In the following days, Rose began to plan for herself. She could no longer bear to be used and manipulated by the people she once trusted. Rose decided to investigate every job more thoroughly, collecting evidence of Mason and her father's shady activities. She also secretly contacted people who worked for Justin to better understand how Mason had ruined her friend's life. During the investigation, Rose discovered many details that she had never expected. Mason had not only taken over Justin's company, but he was also involved in many other illegal businesses. Things gradually became clearer when Rose discovered that Mason had used money from illegal activities to build his perfect image in the eyes of everyone. One night, while Mason was at work, Rose secretly broke into his office. She searched through his computer and files, rummaging through everything in hopes of finding evidence. After hours of searching, she discovered a hard drive containing important documents. Inside were illegal contracts, evidence of financial manipulation, and a lot of information related to Justin's company. Rose breathed a sigh of relief. Finally, she had the evidence she needed. She copied everything onto a memory stick and kept it safe. That night, Rose returned home with a clear plan in mind. She would confront Mason and her father, and this time she would not let them get away with it as easily as before. That evening, Rose invited Mason and her father to her house under the pretext of discussing the wedding. Both men came, unaware that they were falling into a trap that Rose had prepared. When the three of them sat down, Rose turned on the laptop in front of them, projecting the evidence she had collected onto the screen. Mason and her father sat still, their expressions gradually becoming tense. Mason tried to remain calm, but his eyes betrayed his panic. Rose's father could not hide his worry either. "What is this?" her father asked, his voice trembling. Rose looked straight into the eyes of the two men. "This is the truth that you have been trying to hide. I know everything, and I will not let you continue to deceive me." Mason stood up and walked towards Rose angrily. "What do you think you can do with this nonsense? Who do you think will believe you?" The room suddenly became heavy, the atmosphere tense like before a battle. Rose sat across from him, keeping her composure, but her hands were clenched as if to stop herself from shaking. "What do you think you can do with this little thing?" Mason growled, his eyes full of menace. "Who do you think will believe you? Everyone is on my side, even your father is on my side. You are ruining your own life." Rose did not back down. She had prepared for this situation. She stood up to face Mason, her voice calm but determined. "Don't think you can control me, Mason. I am no longer a puppet for you and my father to control. I have gathered enough evidence to expose what you did, and if you think my father will protect you, you are mistaken." Father Rose sat still in his chair, his face slightly confused. He did not expect his daughter to confront him so strongly. He was about to say something, but Rose interrupted him. "I know everything about your involvement in this. You were behind everything, helping Mason take over Justin's company and driving his family into a corner. Do you think I will stay silent forever? But you are wrong. I am strong enough to face the truth, and I will not be deceived any more," Rose said, her eyes determined. Mason tried to stay calm, but Rose could see the worry on his face. He stepped closer, his voice low, trying to persuade. "Don't do this, Rose. We can work things out. There's no need for this. What do you think exposing everything will help you? You'll only make things difficult for yourself and your son." Rose looked straight into Mason's eyes. Her voice became sharp. "You can fool me, but you can't fool yourself. I've prepared everything. If you don't stop, I'll make everything public." Rose's words were like a slap to Mason's pride. He stepped back, not saying another word, but there was a cold glint in his eyes. Mason understood that this time Rose was ready to fight him. Rose's father sat quietly, his face tense. He knew that things were getting out of hand. He had never expected Rose to be so strong and determined. "What do you want, Rose?" her father asked, his voice colder than before. "Do you think you can ruin both of these men's lives? Why not? You'll only make yourself a lost cause. You'll have no one on your side." Rose turned to look at her father, her eyes red but not sad or afraid. "I don't care. At least I won't have to live in lies and deceit anymore. You chose to side with Mason instead of protecting me, but I won't let that end my life." Her voice was sharp, each word a confirmation of her determination. Father Rose was silent. Mason turned back, trying to take one last chance to control the situation. "Rose, think again. What do you want? Money? Power? I can give you anything, just let it go. We can go back to the way things were." He admitted he had said it, but he still wanted a family with me. Rose smiled faintly. Mason's words no longer had any effect on her. She knew his nature too well. "Family. You have destroyed everything I believed in. You don't understand anything about love and family, Mason. To you, everything is just a tool to achieve your goals." "So what are you going to do?" Mason asked, his voice full of challenge. "I have money. I have power. What can you do?" "I don't need to win," Rose replied, her eyes shining with determination. "As long as I know I fought for what was right, that's enough for me." Mason looked at Rose for a long moment, his eyes slowly turning from angry to quiet. He realized that this time Rose was no longer the weak woman he could easily control. She was ready to face anything, even if it might affect her life. "All right, Rose, if you want to fight, I will fight to the end," Mason said, his voice returning to cold. "But don't be stubborn, or you and your son will not be able to live in peace after this." Rose did not flinch at Mason's threat. She had been prepared for this. She knew it would not be easy, but she also knew that this was her only chance to escape the cycle of lies and betrayal. "I'm not afraid of you, Mason," Rose said, her eyes full of provocation. Mason said nothing more. He turned and walked out of the apartment, the door closing behind him, leaving Rose alone in the large room. But this time she did not feel alone. She knew she had made the right decision, and no matter how difficult the future was, she would never let herself go back to this life of lies. After her confrontation with Mason, Rose knew she had no time to hesitate. She had gathered enough evidence and knew she had to act immediately. Rose contacted a trusted lawyer, whom she had been in secret contact with throughout the investigation. The next day, Rose met with her lawyer again and sat down to discuss their next steps. "I have everything," Rose said, handing over the memory stick containing important documents. "I am ready to face everything." Her lawyer nodded, his eyes serious. "This will not be an easy fight, Rose. Are you prepared?" "I believe we have a chance to win." Rose smiled gently, but she could not help but feel nervous. Despite her thorough preparation, she knew that confronting Mason and her father would be a great challenge. "We are not just fighting for me," Rose said, her eyes shining. "We are fighting for the people who have been harmed by people like Mason." She knew that no matter what happened, she would not back down, and this time she would fight to the end. In the following days, Rose and her lawyer began to implement their plan. They sent documents and evidence to the relevant authorities and began to conduct a deeper investigation into Mason and his illegal acts. At the same time, Rose also sought to protect herself and her son from the danger posed by Mason. Mason, after learning about the incident, began to react more strongly. He used every means to defame Rose, from spreading false rumours about her to threatening those close to her. For him, this was not only a battle for power and money, but also a battle to protect his image in society. Early one morning, as Rose was getting ready to take Kevin to school, she received a phone call from an unknown number. The voice on the other end of the line was cold and distant. "Rose, you should stop before things get worse. You don't know who you're dealing with." Rose tried to stay calm, but it was clear that this was coming from Mason. "Do you think these threats will scare me? I'm no longer a weak woman that you can manipulate. You won't be able to do anything to me," Rose replied, her voice sharp. The man on the other end chuckled and hung up. Rose looked at the phone screen and deleted the call. Mason was clearly trying to pressure her, but she wouldn't back down. A few days later, a fierce attack from Mason began. People in the business world began to hear rumours about her, that she was involved in illegal business with her father and was trying to cover it up. Not only that, Mason also spread rumours that she was using her relationship to harm him. These rumours spread quickly, causing a significant impact on Rose's life and reputation. She began to receive judgmental looks and innuendos from those around her. But Rose did not let those things weaken her spirit. She knew that this was just part of Mason's game, and she would not let him win easily. One evening, as Rose sat reviewing the evidence with her lawyer, she received a text message from an anonymous number. The message read simply, "If you continue, your son will not be safe." Rose felt sick. Kevin was everything to her, and Mason knew it. She knew he was looking for her weakest point. Rose immediately called her lawyer and asked for extra protection for Justin. Her lawyer also recognized the seriousness of the situation. "We will contact the police to provide Justin with security. Mason is getting out of control, and that means we are on the right track," the lawyer said, trying to reassure Rose. On the day of her first court appearance, Rose entered the courtroom prepared. She had been preparing for this battle for a long time, and now it was time to face Mason and her father. Unexpectedly, Rose's supporters were present. They knew what Mason had done, and they were on her side in this battle. Mason appeared with his legal team, his face still cold, but there was a hint of tension in his eyes. He knew that Rose had prepared well, and this time he would not be able to control the situation as easily as before. During the trial, Rose's lawyer presented solid evidence of Mason's financial fraud, and other illegal acts. The documents that Rose collected exposed a dark network that Mason had built to hide his illegal acts, especially his taking over Justin's company through deceitful and malicious means, which shocked everyone in the courtroom. Mason and his lawyer tried every way to refute, but the evidence was too obvious for him to turn the situation around. The pressure on Mason became heavier as witnesses came forward to accuse him. Justin, Rose's old friend, despite being mentally unstable, was also called to testify. With the help of his family and his lawyer, Justin looked at Mason with angry eyes. "I used to trust you, Mason, but you did it to me, put my family on the brink of despair. And now I just want justice to be served," Justin said, his voice full of bitterness. Mason was speechless. He knew the odds were stacked against him, but he wasn't going to give up easily. He turned to Rose, his eyes blazing with hatred. "You'll never get out of this, Rose," Mason whispered, his voice sharp. Rose wasn't fazed by Mason's threat. She knew this was the final step in the fight, and she was prepared to deal with the consequences. After days of litigation in court, the trial finally came to an end. Mason, with irrefutable evidence, was convicted of his illegal actions. The court sentenced him to many years in prison and ordered him to pay compensation to the victims, including Justin and his family. When the verdict was announced, Mason could no longer maintain his composure. He bowed his head, knowing that his career and life had officially collapsed. Rose sat in the row opposite, feeling a sense of sadness, but also relief. She was not happy about Mason's defeat, but she knew that this was the only way to get things back on track. After the trial ended, Rose walked out of the courtroom taking a deep breath. Her lawyer walked up to her, smiling. "You did it, Rose. We won." Rose nodded, but her heart still felt heavy. She knew that life would never be the same again. The wounds that Mason and his father caused would never be erased, but at least she fought for justice and truth. Justin walked up to Rose, put his hand on her shoulder. "Thank you, Rose. Without you, I don't know what I would do. I hope you and Tuan will find happiness again." Rose looked at Justin, her eyes filled with tears. "It's nothing, Justin. I just did what I thought was right. Take care of yourself. You still have a long life ahead of you." After everything ended, Rose started a new life with her son. She was not haunted by the painful past and betrayal. She knew that life had many difficulties, but she was ready to face them with all her strength. One day, while taking little Kevin for a walk in the park, Rose realized that despite all the pain in the past, she still had the most precious thing, her son. Kevin looked at his mother innocently and asked, "Mum, will we be happy forever?" Rose bent down to hug her son, nodding gently. "Yes, my love. Mum will always be with you, and we will be happy forever." Even though life had its ups and downs, Rose knew that with love and perseverance, she and her son would find their own way. Our story today will stop here. Thank you for taking the time to watch the entire video. Hopefully, the details and emotions in the story have brought you interesting and meaningful moments. If you like this video, don't forget to like, share, and leave a comment below the video to let us know your opinion. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any stories in the future. Each of your subscriptions and likes will be a source of motivation for Jane and the program production team to create more attractive videos. And now, see you in the next videos. Wish you a great day.